goalies with a ton of success over their careers. You could talk about Marty Brodeur, talk about Ed Belfour.
Eddie B. That's a good name. That's a good pull.
That's a good pull, right? That's what I do. I pull once an episode. I pull a good pull. But
Andy Moog,
Tom Barrasso. No, but no. There's some great netminders, obviously. That have won multiple cups and that were in the running for Vezina every year. Cujo, but but they didn't dominate a game, regardless of the defense in front of them. I will say that certain players benefited from playing for teams that had a defensive style in general, and also played with some of the best defenders that I've ever seen. But Dominic Hasek did not have the benefit of any of those things most of the time, and just absolutely stood on his head, quite literally sometimes, while most of the time probably being hammered. So that's always a cool pick there. And of course, Miro Shatan, to the casual fan that doesn't know any better, is spelled Satan.
Satan, baby.
So when you're a young man and you see a Satan jersey, that can be appealing. So sure, that's two great names to have on your list there. I
mean, out of all guys on that team in terms of offense, Shatan stands out the most to me. I don't know.
He's probably the only 40 goal scorer. That's for sure.
And I'm thinking of like guys that were on, like Jeff Sanderson was probably on that team. Curtis Brown, guys that were just kind of like just excellent team players, but Shatan just kind of stood out to me offensively. It was more about Hasek than Shatan, let's put it that way.
For sure.
I just love the names.
Right.
If anything, the names are fucking elite. That's an elite duo of names.
There we go. I'll take it.
All right, Rueter, number 3 for you, sir.
Number 3 for me. I am switching gears back to baseball here, and I am going with a real duo, so much so that they had a nickname. That's how you know that you're a good duo, when you're awarded a nickname. And for me, it was the Astros, is the team. And, nowadays, I can't stand the Astros. They're just filthy cheaters, and I hate Correa. And Altuve's too little to play baseball. I can't stand him either.
Oh, I used to love Altuve too.
Oh, so yuck. Bregman, gross. Brantley's a traitor. All these guys. But back in the day, a lot of people might not remember, or those maybe suffering from some recency bias, the Astros used to be those lovable losers for years and years. It was so much fun watching them play. And my guys that I'm going with here are the Killer Bees. And that's Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell. And these were two guys that, frankly, couldn't have been much more opposite as players. Craig Biggio was a speedster, leadoff type of guy, career like 280 hitter, who played amazing defense and was kind of just the spark plug for that offense. Then you got Jeff Bagwell, who had a goatee down to his knees, and was just more of a slugger. He popped some home runs. He didn't always hit, a ton of home runs, but certainly a lot of doubles. He had excellent line drive power to the gaps, and he actually played a great first base also. Bagwell, for me, one of the most underappreciated guys throughout his career. He won a Rookie of the Year. He won an MVP. He's still amongst the top players in the history of baseball in WAR, which is wins above replacement, kind of a great stat that shows your overall worth to a team on a yearly basis. And both of these guys are in the Hall of Fame. They never won, due mostly to not having a lot of talent around them, nor did they ever have a really great pitching staff with them there either. But these were two guys that played together for 14 years. And just an amazing duo. The Killer Bees, actually, they had some names added along with them at certain times. So I want to give a shout out to Derek Bell and Lance Berkman, who, when you say the Killer Bees, sometimes those guys get thrown in as well. But the foundation, the real duo there, two of my favorite players of all time, Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell.
Did Berkman play with those two at one point? Did they all three of them play together? Oh, wow.
Yep.
I didn't realize. I thought Berkman was well after.
Yep. So Berkman played in the early to mid 2000s, and he caught a couple years there with them because Biggio and Bagwell, I guess I should have said, were there together from 1991 to 2005. So they spent a majority of their career together. It was just two great players. And I will say, Bagwell getting into the Hall of Fame was really cool because he was kind of a slugger throughout the steroid era, and he never even had a sniff of a steroid accusation thrown in his direction. He was just a player that was absolutely clean and really well respected in a time where baseball was kind of tainted. So just growing up, two of my favorite players. Also, my last side note before I let Bryce get to his number 3 is that Craig Biggio did exactly what I did when I played baseball when I was a little kid, which was he was a catcher and he was a second baseman, and those were the exact 2 positions that I played growing up, and I thought that was really cool. And that's my 2 of my favorite childhood players.
He came up as a catcher. He played a couple of years, I think, behind the plate for Houston, and then they moved him to second.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, catcher and second base. Loved it.
I like how you did that, and that's probably why I like these kind of personal duos the most, because there's always some sort of backstory. And I remember, I think Ed and I played baseball against each other, not with each other ever, but against each other. And I remember Ed behind the plate catching, and for him to relate to kind of a guy like Biggio in terms of just because he played the same 2 positions as you. I think that's why I really enjoyed coming up with these duos. So,
boom. All right, number 3 for me, and we're going back to football. And if you know me, you know who I represent. Them Dirty Birds down in Maryland. Shout out to my Baltimore Ravens. Right now, 5-1, by the way. 4-1, excuse me. But the reason I became a Baltimore Ravens fan, honestly, and just some great memories with these 2 is because of Ray Lewis and Mr. Ed Reed. Gentlemen, I have a quick trivia question for you guys real quick. All right. The earth is covered 71% by water. All right. Do you know who covers the rest of that percentage there?
Ed Reed.
You goddamn right. The greatest ball hawk in NFL history, Ray Lewis, the most menacing, and for my money, the best defensive player of all time. I know I'm a little biased there, but just stick with me here, okay? But listen, these 2 joined forces in 2002 when Reed was drafted, both out of Miami, by the way. Shout out to the U. And, I got some numbers for you guys, man. First of all, they won back-to-back Defensive Players of the Year. Ray Lewis in 2003, Ed Reed in 2004. Since their time together, the Baltimore Ravens captured 4 division titles. Okay. They had a combined 9 all-pro first-team selections. All right. 4 by Ray Lewis, 5 by Ed Reed. Combined 17 Pro Bowls together. All right. 8 by Ray, 9 by Reed. And then since joining forces, since 2002, Baltimore defensively, this is where we finished at. All right. 22nd, 3rd, 6th, 5th, 1st, 06. That, by the way, that 06 Baltimore Ravens defense, the greatest defense to never win a championship. 6th, 2nd, 3rd, 10th, 3rd, and then in 12, 17th, where they actually won their first Super Bowl together. That was Ray Lewis' second and Ed Reed's first. On average, Baltimore's defense was finishing minimum 7th place in defense, man. And it was honestly because of those 2 players. Like, the things that they was able to do on the football field together, the communication, the trust between one another. Ray Lewis would just give, like, it was literally documented. Ray Lewis would just give Ed Reed a certain look, and they just knew, okay, we about to go do this because this quarterback is about to do that, and boom, turnover, or boom, tackle for a loss. The symmetry and the connection that those 2 shared on the football was just absolutely phenomenal. And man, it was a pleasure. It was honestly an honor to watch those 2 play football at the highest form all the way, and I got to see their full careers play out. So yeah, shout out to those 2, man. I absolutely. Baltimore football would not be Baltimore football without those 2 greatest Ravens of all time.
Yeah, man, Ray Lewis absolutely killed. So.
he was a killer for sure, man. That's a great pick. He was he murdered it out there every week.
When you think of Ray Lewis, you think of the most intimidating, probably middle linebacker to ever play. And at least in my era, just watching him out there, I just always remember him coming out of the tunnel with the Ray Lewis dance, getting the team hyped up, pumped up. Definitely the leader of that defense. And like you said, Ed Reed was always making plays. The guy just was around the ball constantly. Totally agree. The 2 leaders of that Ravens defense for all those years that you went over there.
What the people at home couldn't see, unfortunately, is that while he was talking there, you wouldn't know because he didn't get winded at all. He did a perfect rendition of the Ray Lewis dance while he was talking there. It was incredible. So I only wish you could have seen what I just saw.
What people would know is that I would definitely be winded if I even did that. I am so out of shape. I sweat looking for things in the refrigerator. So that's how bad it is for me.
I can't tell you how many times I practiced that damn dance ever since I first seen it. And I got it down pat. I break it out in the club. No, I got to be drunk.
Break it out. The Ray Lewis at the club?
Break it out in the club. Is
that one of the moves?
It's a legit
white
club
suit.
dance.
Well, you're wearing the white suit, right?
It works. It is a go-to club move.
Shit, I'd go home with you if you did that for me at the club.
I'm gonna hold you to that. All right, number 2. I'm just kidding. That's a kid. That's a joke. Number 2. What you got,
Is it
Joe?
me? It's me. Well, Ed stole my shit. So my number 2, Ed had already mentioned. I have a little bit of a backstory with these two guys, but we actually came up with these duos completely on our own. We didn't talk about it at all. I have Stockton and Malone as my number 2, and it's really weird to me that like two guys from, I guess, Western New York, but the East Coast could really like and fall in love with these two kind of guys on an obscure team, the Utah Jazz. If you're naming every single NBA team, it's one of those teams. Them and the Phoenix Suns, I feel like you would always forget about. You forget that they exist almost, like back in the day at least. The Utah Jazz in the 80s had a coach named Frank Layden. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not. He was the coach in the early to mid 80s, and he used to coach for Niagara University, coached the Niagara University Purple Eagles. So he was a local guy at one point. He lived in Niagara Falls at one point in his life before he became the coach, and then eventually, I believe, the general manager of the Jazz. And Frank Layden had a son named Scott Layden, who at one time was the GM for the Knicks, I believe. But Scott grew up in Niagara Falls and was in high school when my dad coached at Niagara Catholic. My dad coached football and basketball at Niagara Catholic. So he knew Scott Layden and he knew Frank Layden just because, the boy had went to Niagara Catholic, and I believe he played basketball for my dad. And if shout out to everybody who knows my dad. Everybody used to think he was my grandpa, but I swear to God, everybody knows who he is in Niagara Falls if you went through Niagara Catholic or played any sport whatsoever. So one day when I was very young, I would say 6, 7, maybe, this man showed up at our house, and I didn't know who it was, and it was Scott Layden, and he was an adult at the time, and he just came to visit my dad because he was his coach. I guess they had a pretty good relationship, and he knew that he had me as a young as a young boy. My dad would bring me to the practices, and I just remember running everywhere in the gym in Niagara Catholic. And not paying any attention to the basketball games. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. And he brought me all sorts of Utah Jazz posters, signed posters, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Utah Jazz, pennants, gear, a lot of stuff like that. And before that, Utah Jazz weren't really much to me. But then once I got that from Scott Layden, I kind of started following them, and that kind of made me fall in love with the Jazz in terms of, back in the day, and then with Stockton and Malone. And I think Ed really kind of talked about everything that the two of them, brought to the court and did in their careers. So I won't touch into that, but I have that kind of personal connection with the Jazz, and Stockton and Malone were like the next big thing. And as Bryce said, obviously, we know Jordan and Pippen, we know that, they're the best duo, but we're not stupid. But we, it's more personal for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that backstory. That's dope.
Thanks.
It's a really cool story. A lot of my best stories come to this guy showed up at my house. Where a lot of my best stories start. So that was nice to hear that I wasn't alone in that adventure.
He was half naked. You guess which half.
He was carrying an umbrella. It's just a random story. I loved it though. No, that's cool when you get a personal touch as a kid. There's probably a lot of stories that I'm sure a lot of the listeners could relate to, of going to a ball game and meeting a ball player that was like nice to you at the time or signed an autograph, and you just become a fan of that guy moving forward. And it's really cool to hear that it wasn't the players themselves